We can't come next week, which is that my heart dropped.
Right.
I'm pregnant. April Fools.
They made us smile, they made us cry, and then they were gone in the blink of an eye. This is not just a list, it is a tribute to the talent we lost too soon. We are going to explore the shocking circumstances surrounding the deaths of 20 TV icons. From a comedian whose heart gave out during a rehearsal to a star whose hotel room death remains a mystery. The final story on this list involves a diagnosis that came way too late. One Matthew Perry on Friends.
Because every time I go to the dentist, I look down the hygienist's blouse.
We have to start with the one that hurt the entire world. Matthew Perry was the sarcasm king Chandler Bing on the massive hit Friends. He made us laugh for 10 years straight with his quick wit and awkward charm. But what many overlooked is that while he was making us smile, he was fighting a war inside his own head. He was very open about his struggles with substances and alcohol, writing a book that detailed his journey to sobriety. He spent over $9 million trying to get clean, which is a staggering number. So when news broke in late 2023 that he was found unresponsive in his hot tub at his Los Angeles home, the world stopped turning. It seemed like he was finally in a good place. But the toxicology report revealed something shocking. It was the acute effects of ketamine, a strong medication that caused him to lose consciousness and drown. The thing nobody tells you is that he was undergoing therapy, but the levels in his system were incredibly high. It was a tragic end for a man who just wanted to help others. You think that is heartbreaking, but wait until you hear about the next actor who collapsed right in front of his castmates and they thought he was doing a comedy bit. Second John Ritter on 8 Simple Rules.
You listened. I can't tell you how much this means to me.
Besides, when he got all cleaned up and the bristle marks faded, he...
John Ritter was the master of physical comedy. He became a legend on Three's Company, tripping over sofas and making faces that could crack up a stone statue. Decades later, he made a huge comeback as the dad on 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter. He was beloved by everyone on set. On September 11, 2003, he was rehearsing scenes for the show. He started sweating profusely and complaining of chest pains. Because he was such a funny guy known for pratfalls, some people on set initially thought he might be goofing around. But it was serious. He was rushed to the hospital across the street. The doctors thought he was having a heart attack and treated him for that. But here is the wow factor that makes this so tragic. He was not having a heart attack. He had an aortic dissection, which is a tear in the main artery carrying blood from the heart. It is a rare condition, and because they treated him for the wrong thing, he passed away during surgery later that night. He was only 54 years old. The show had to continue without him, and they wrote his death into the series, making for some of the saddest episodes in TV history. While a medical mistake is terrifying, the next story involves a domestic situation that turned into a nightmare. 3. Phil Hartman on News Radio.
You can also try one clean 15-second pop without the audio bit.
You might know Phil. Hartman as the man of 1,000 voices on The Simpsons, or the glue that held Saturday Night Live together. He was also the star of the sitcom News Radio, playing the arrogant but hilarious Bill McNeil. Phil was known as one of the nicest and most professional guys in the business. He was just a regular guy who loved his kids and his work. But behind the closed doors of his home, things were not peaceful. His wife, Bryn, had been struggling with substance issues and mental health battles for a long time. In the early hours of May 28, 1998, a tragedy unfolded that no one saw coming. While Phil was sleeping in his bed, his wife entered the room and took his life. It was a shock that rocked Hollywood to its foundation. He was at the peak of his career and had so much more to give. The police arrived later, but it was too late for both of them, as she also ended her own life. It left their 2 young children without parents, which is the saddest part of all. The industry lost a genius that day. Losing a legend is hard, but losing a young star just as their career is taking off is a different kind of pain. 4. Michelle Thomas on Family Matters.
And I'm sure that you're aware that Steve derives from the Greek, Stephanos, i.e. crown.
If you watched 90s TV, you definitely remember Michelle Thomas. She played Myra Monkhouse on Family Matters, the overly obsessed girlfriend of Steve Urkel. She was high-energy beautiful and incredibly funny. Before that, she played the girlfriend of Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. She was a rising star with a bright future ahead of her. She had just landed a new role on the soap opera The Young and the Restless, and everything seemed perfect. But not all things are what they seem. Michelle had been silently fighting a very rare and aggressive form of bone cancer. It is called a desmoplastic small round cell tumor, and it is something usually found in adolescent boys, making her case extremely rare. She underwent surgery to remove a lemon-sized tumor and thought she was in the clear, but tragically the cancer returned with a vengeance. She passed away in New York City, surrounded by her family at the incredibly young age of 30. She chose to keep her battle private so she could keep working, which shows her dedication. Speaking of stars, leaving us too soon, the next actor met his end on a dark highway after a night out. 5. Lamont Bentley on Moesha.
You gonna go propose to my girl and ask me what's up? Look, I'm sorry if you got hurt.
Lamont Bentley was a staple of 90s sitcoms. He was best known as Hakeem Campbell, the best friend and neighbor on the hit show Moesha. He was the guy with the big appetite and the even bigger heart, providing comic relief in every scene. After the show ended, he was working on getting his career to the next level. He was a father of 2 young daughters and had so much to live for. On a tragic night in January 2005, Lamont was driving alone in Los Angeles shortly after midnight. He was heading home after attending a movie screening. Witnesses say his car was traveling at a high speed when it flew off the freeway ramp. The vehicle rolled down an embankment and he was thrown from the car. He passed away at the scene from his injuries. He was only 31 years old. What makes this so haunting is that he was just starting to produce his own projects. He had a vision for his future that was cut short in a split second. Traffic accidents are sudden and brutal, but the next story involves a personal battle that ended in a lonely hotel room. 6. David Strickland on Suddenly Susan.
I like playing music, but I'm not very good.
Suddenly Susan was a popular sitcom in the late 90s starring Brooke Shields. One of the breakout stars was David Strickland, who played the frantic and funny rock music reporter Todd Stites. He had this boyish charm and a chaotic energy that fans loved. But deep down, David was fighting demons that nobody could fully see. He had struggled with bipolar disorder and substance issues for years. He had stopped taking his medication because he felt it dulled his comedic senses, which is a tragic choice many artists face. In March 1999, David went to Las Vegas. He checked into a motel in a gritty part of town, not the flashy strip you see in movies. After partying for a few days, he tragically took his own life. The production of Suddenly Susan was halted, and the cast was devastated. They eventually dedicated an episode to him, where his character also goes missing, but they handled it with grace. It opened up a huge conversation about mental health in Hollywood, but sadly, it was too late for David. While David was young, the next actor on our list was a comedy veteran whose death was eerily foreshadowed by his most famous catchphrase. 7. Red Fox on The Royal Family.
I didn't know then you was gonna wind up being my wife.
Red Fox was a comedy legend. He broke barriers with his stand-up and became a household name as Fred Sanford on Sanford and Son. Everyone remembers his famous bit where he would grab his chest, fake a heart attack, and yell, "I am coming to join you, Elizabeth," to his late TV wife. It was one of the most famous running gags in television history. In 1991, he was starring in a new sitcom called The Royal Family, trying to capture that magic again. On October 11th, he was on set rehearsing a scene. Suddenly, he fell to the floor. Because he had done the fake heart attack bit hundreds of times, the cast and crew actually laughed, thinking he was doing his classic routine. But the thing nobody tells you is that this time, it was not a joke. He was having a massive heart attack. By the time they realized he was not acting, it was critical. He passed away later that evening. It is almost poetic in a tragic way that the thing he joked about for years was the very thing that took him from us. From a veteran to a child star, the next story is about the boy with the bowl cut who stole America's heart. 8. Adam Rich on 8 is enough.
Starkwell. He's the pitcher for the Cyclone. Oh. Come on, let's go get his autograph.
Adam Rich was known as America's little brother. He played Nicholas, the youngest child on the hit show 8 is Enough. With his distinctive haircut and cute smile, he was on lunchboxes and magazine covers everywhere. But growing up in the spotlight is not easy. As he got older, Adam struggled to find his footing in Hollywood. He faced legal troubles and battled with substance dependency for decades. He was in and out of rehab, and the tabloids were often cruel to him. However, in his later years, he seemed to have found some peace. He was active on social media, often posting about mental health and trying to break the stigma. That is why it was such a shock when he was found passed away in his Los Angeles home in early 2023. The autopsy later revealed it was an accidental overdose of fentanyl. He was not trying to end his life. It was a tragic mistake involving toxic substances. He was 54 years old. He went from the cutest kid on TV to a cautionary tale, but he always tried to be kind. Speaking of kindness, our next loss is perhaps the most universally loved comedian of all time. 9. Robin Williams on Mork and Mindy.
Do you realize the Venusians are coming down to Earth?
Before he was the genie or Mrs. Doubtfire, Robin Williams was the alien Mork from Ork on the sitcom Mork and Mindy. That show launched him into the stratosphere. He was a ball of energy that could not be contained. For decades, he made the world laugh, but he also had the range to make us cry in dramatic roles. He seemed invincible, like a force of nature that would be around forever. In August 2014, the news broke that Robin Williams had taken his own life at his home in California. The entire world went into mourning. It felt personal for millions of people. At first, people thought it was just depression, but months later, his widow revealed the wow factor that changed everything. Robin had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a degenerative brain disease that was causing him hallucinations, paranoia, and anxiety. He was losing his mind, and he knew it, but he did not know why. He was fighting a silent battle against his own brain. It was a tragic end for a man who brought so much joy. While Robin battled silently, the next actor had a very public and controversial post-TV life. 10. Dustin Diamond on Saved by the Bell.
He's kind of turned his nose up to the world, and I really haven't. That's the farthest thing from the truth.
Dustin Diamond played Samuel Screech Powers on Saved by the Bell. He was the nerdy sidekick that everyone rooted for. He played that character for 13 years across different versions of the show. But after the show ended, Dustin had a really hard time separating himself from Screech. He became a controversial figure, releasing a tell-all book that bashed his castmates and getting into legal trouble. He was estranged from the rest of the Saved by the Bell cast for years. In early 2021, Dustin was hospitalized in Florida, complaining of pain all over his body. The doctors ran tests and discovered he had stage 4 small cell carcinoma, a type of lung cancer. What is shocking is that he was not a smoker. The cancer was incredibly aggressive. Just 3 weeks after his diagnosis, he passed away. He was only 44 years old. Because of the pandemic, he was largely alone in the hospital, which is just heartbreaking. His former castmates sent their condolences, realizing that life is too short for grudges, from one child star to another. The next story is a grim reminder of the curse of different strokes. 11. Dana Plato on Different Strokes.
Well, guys, I don't know what happened. I just got ravenous.
Different Strokes is often called the most cursed sitcom in history because of what happened to its 3 child stars. Dana Plato played Kimberly Drummond, the wholesome older sister. She was the picture of the girl next door. But once she left the show, her life spiraled out of control. She had trouble finding work, she lost her money, and she struggled with severe substance issues. She ended up living in a trailer park in Oklahoma, far away from the glamour of Hollywood. In 1999, the day before Mother's Day, Dana passed away inside her trailer. She was visiting her fiancé's family. The medical examiner ruled it a passing by her own hand due to a lethal amount of pain medication. She was only 34. Just the day before, she had appeared on The Howard Stern Show claiming she was clean and sober, but callers were cruel to her on air. It was a devastating end for someone who had everything and lost it all. Sadly, she was not the only cast member from that show to meet a tragic end. 12. Gary Coleman on Different Strokes.
You sold Homer? I think my heart just stopped.
Gary Coleman was the face of Different Strokes. His catchphrase, "What you talkin' 'bout Willis," is legendary. He was a small man with a huge personality due to a congenital kidney condition that stunted his growth. Because of his health, he had a transplant at a young age and faced medical issues his entire life. Like Dana, he struggled after the show ended, suing his parents for stealing his money and ending up working as a security guard to make ends meet. In 2010, Gary was at his home in Utah. He suffered a fall down the stairs. It might sound like a minor accident, but for Gary, due to his health issues, it was catastrophic. He suffered an intracranial hemorrhage, which is bleeding in the brain. He was taken off life support a few days later, passing away at age 42. It was a sad conclusion to a life that had been full of struggle since childhood. But sometimes tragedy strikes right in the middle of a show's success, like with our next actor who was the heart of a Boston bar. 13. Nicholas Colasanto on Cheers.
Sure, after I give him the answers.
Cheers was one of the biggest sitcoms of the 80s, and Nicholas Colasanto was the heart and soul of the bar as coach. He was the dim-witted but lovable bartender who gave great advice. He was an older actor who had finally found the role of a lifetime. The audience adored him. But Nicholas had severe heart disease that was worsened by years of alcohol use earlier in his life, even though he had been sober for a while. During the 3rd season of Cheers, his health began to decline rapidly. He had trouble remembering his lines, so the writers put them on surfaces around the set. He died of a heart attack in his home in 1985. The producers were so heartbroken that they did not just replace him. They kept his picture on the set of the bar for the rest of the series. If you look closely in the final episode, when Sam Malone straightens a picture of an Indian chief, he is actually acknowledging Colasanto. It was a touching tribute. From a peaceful passing to a violent act, the next death stunned fans of 90s comedy. 14. Merlin Santana on The Steve Harvey Show.
Yeah, there's supposed to be shoes laying around the crib.
Merlin Santana was a rising star with a lot of charisma. He played Romeo on The Steve Harvey Show, a smooth-talking high school student. He also had roles on The Cosby Show and Getting By. He was handsome, talented, and had a huge following. He was only 26 years old and had his whole career ahead of him. In November 2002, Merlin was sitting in a car in Los Angeles. Another person approached the vehicle and opened fire. Merlin was shot and tragically passed away at the scene. It was a senseless act of violence stemming from a misunderstanding involving a woman he had met earlier that night. The person who took his life was later convicted, but that did not bring back the talented young actor. It was a reminder of how quickly life can be taken. While Merlin's death was violent, the next mystery involves a beloved TV dad found alone in a luxury hotel. 15. Bob Saget on Full House.
Everything you want to, but, and this is the beauty part, we are all going to do everything together.
For an entire generation, Bob Saget was simply America's dad. As Danny Tanner on Full House, he was the obsessively clean, hug-dispensing father figure who taught us right from wrong in a San Francisco townhouse. He was the guy who solved problems with a soft piano soundtrack playing in the background. But the real magic of Bob Saget was the contrast. In real life, he wasn't Danny Tanner at all. He was a delightfully filthy comedian known for the darkest, bluest humor in the industry. That duality made him fascinating. By 2022, Bob was in the middle of a massive career renaissance. He was touring the country, getting back to his stand-up roots, and he seemed happier than he had been in years. He had just finished a 2-hour set in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida, where the crowd absolutely loved him. Afterward, he posted a selfie on Instagram, beaming with joy, talking about how he felt like he was in his 20s again and how addicted he was to the stage. He drove back to the Ritz-Carlton in Orlando, filled with adrenaline and gratitude. He entered his room, hung up his clothes, and got ready for bed. The next afternoon, when he missed his checkout time, hotel security entered the room and found him unresponsive in bed. The world stopped. It didn't make sense. He was vibrant and healthy just hours before. The autopsy revealed he died from blunt head trauma. Authorities concluded that he likely slipped in the bathroom or the bedroom, hit the back of his head on the marble floor or the headboard, and, this is the scary part, thought nothing of it. He probably felt a bit dizzy, took some Advil, and went to sleep to walk it off. He never woke up. The wow factor here, and the thing that spawned a million conspiracy theories, was the severity of the injury. The medical examiner noted that the fractures in his skull were so severe they were consistent with someone who had been hit with a baseball bat or had fallen from a 2-story building. It wasn't just a little bump, yet there was no foul play, no struggle, and no drugs involved. It was a tragic freak accident. It terrified everyone because it highlighted how fragile life is. You can literally just slip, think you're fine, and fade away. Speaking of sudden collapses that shocked the world, another TV dad died doing exactly what he loved most. 16. Alan Thicke on Growing Pains.
You think you might have a stray thought or two you could share with your mother before she goes to work?
If Danny Tanner was the neurotic dad, Dr. Jason Seaver from Growing Pains was the cool dad. Played by Alan Thicke, he was the psychiatrist who worked from home, always managing to stay calm, collected, and charming while raising a chaotic family. Off-screen, Alan Thicke was just as beloved. He was a Canadian icon, and like any good Canadian, hockey wasn't just a hobby. It was in his blood. It was part of his DNA. Alan was known for being incredibly active. He didn't act his age. Even in his late 60s, he was out there skating hard, playing in celebrity leagues, and keeping himself in top physical shape. He was the picture of health, which is why what happened on December 13, 2016, was so hard to process. Alan was at the Pickwick Gardens ice rink in Burbank, California, playing a game with his youngest son, Carter. It was a normal Tuesday. He was skating well, making plays, and having a great time. Suddenly, during a break in the action, he collapsed onto the ice. At first, people thought he might have just winded himself or pulled a muscle. When the paramedics arrived, Alan was actually conscious. In true Alan Thicke fashion, he was cracking jokes with the EMTs as they loaded him onto the stretcher. He even made sure to tell his son to take a picture of him being wheeled out, giving a thumbs up. He was worried about ruining the game, not about dying. Everyone thought he was going to be fine. However, once he arrived at the hospital, the situation turned grim instantly. It wasn't a heart attack in the traditional sense. It was a ruptured aorta. This is the exact same terrifying condition that eliminated actor John Ritter years earlier. It's a silent monster, because often there are no warning signs until the catastrophic event happens. Alan Thicke passed away in the operating room shortly after. He literally died playing the game he loved with his son right by his side. From a sudden, explosive heart issue to a slow, silent battle, our next story involves a star from the 80s who was forced to keep a massive secret. 17. Franklin Seals on Silver Spoons.
Can't I hang out with Rick for at least an hour?
A half hour, a minute of which you've already wasted on this pointless protest.
Silver Spoons was a staple of 80s television, centering on a rich kid and his toy train mansion. But the character who brought a touch of sophistication and sharp wit to the show was Dexter Stuffins, the family's fussy, uptight business manager. He was played by Franklin Seals, a brilliantly talented actor born in St. Vincent. Franklin was classically trained, having studied at Juilliard, and he brought a level of intensity and technique to the sitcom world that most actors didn't have. He stole every scene he was in with just a look or a dry comment. But in the late 1980s, fans and castmates noticed Franklin was starting to change. He looked tired. He was losing weight. He seemed to be fading right in front of the cameras. The thing nobody tells you about this era is just how terrified people were. Franklin was battling complications from AIDS at the height of the epidemic. In the late 80s, the stigma surrounding the virus was horrifying. People were losing their jobs, their homes, and their families just for having a diagnosis. Because of this, Franklin had to keep his condition a fiercely guarded secret. He couldn't tell the press, and he barely told his colleagues. He continued to work, delivering comedic lines and hitting his marks, all while his body was shutting down. It is a testament to his incredible strength and professionalism that he kept performing at such a high level while facing his own mortality. Franklin Seals passed away in May 1990 at the young age of 37. He was one of the many artistic talents lost during that devastating wave, but his death was largely underreported at the time due to the culture of silence. He faded away quietly, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance that didn't get the recognition it deserved until years later. While Franklin kept his illness a secret until the very end, our next actress actually had to be replaced in the middle of her show because she physically couldn't go on. 18. Alice Pierce on Bewitched.
Believe it, she opens doors without electricity. Somebody ought to tell the electric company they're losing a bundle on her.
When you think of the classic sitcom Bewitched, you immediately think of Gladys Kravitz. She was the quintessential nosy neighbor, always peering through her blinds, watching the magic unfold next door, and screaming, "Abner! Abner!" in a hysterical panic. That role was originated by Alice Pierce, a comedic genius with a unique face and a voice that could cut glass. She was absolutely hilarious, bringing a frantic energy to the show that grounded the fantasy elements in reality. Alice was so good in the role that she eventually won a Primetime Emmy Award for it. But most viewers watching the second season noticed something was off. Gladys looked frail. She was noticeably thinner, and her movements were a little slower. What the audience didn't know was that Alice Pierce had been diagnosed with terminal ovarian cancer before Bewitched even started filming. She knew she was dying, but she wanted to work. She never told the cast or the crew about the severity of her condition because she was terrified she would lose the part. She needed the work, but more than that, she loved to perform. So she filmed her scenes while undergoing intense, draining treatments. There were days she was in agonizing pain, but the moment the director yelled, "Action!" she transformed into the energetic, frantic Gladys Kravitz. Alice passed away in 1966 at the age of 48. The show was a massive hit, and the producers were in a bind. They made the difficult choice to recast the role with actress Sandra Gould. While the show went on, fans and critics alike agreed that Alice brought a special magic to the character that could never be duplicated. Her Emmy was awarded posthumously, a final bow for a woman who acted through the pain. From a 60s classic to a legend of the 2000s, the next actor was widely considered one of the kings of comedy. 19. Bernie Mac on The Bernie Mac Show.
You tell me you bought this after I stood right here and told you couldn't have no car?
Bernie Mac was a force of nature. He wasn't just a comedian, he was a presence. He exploded onto the scene with the original Kings of Comedy tour, famously telling a tough crowd, "I ain't scared of you mother hasha so tasitoletse. So had posudi, dalu, sruvudjura lasa sulbo bolpi, tudotie." That fearless attitude defined his career. His sitcom, The Bernie Mac Show, was a massive hit because it flipped the script. Based on his real life taking care of his sister's kids, Bernie would break the fourth wall, look directly into the camera, and talk to America. He was tough, old school, and unapologetic. But underneath it all, he was deeply loving. However, Bernie was fighting a battle inside his own body that most fans knew nothing about. He suffered from a condition called sarcoidosis. It's a rare inflammatory disease where clumps of cells form in your organs, specifically affecting the lungs. It made breathing difficult and left his immune system constantly under attack. Bernie had managed it for years, claiming it was in remission, but the disease had weakened him over time. In 2008, Bernie was admitted to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago. The initial report was that he had pneumonia. Everyone, his fans, his friends, the media, thought he would bounce back. After all, he was Bernie Mac. He was strong. He was invincible. But his mori, compromised by years of fighting sarcoidosis and the strong medications used to treat it, couldn't fight off the infection. The pneumonia escalated rapidly. He went into cardiac arrest and passed away at the age of 50. It was a massive, sudden blow to the comedy world. Thousands of people attended his funeral to pay their respects to the Mac Man. He left behind a legacy of brutal honesty and laughter, proving that you can be tough and vulnerable at the same time. Our final story involves a singing lawyer who found true happiness late in life, only to have it snatched away in the most heartbreaking way possible. 20. Sam Lloyd on Scrubs.
It's only because I have no idea why you would like me.
If you watched Scrubs, you loved Ted Buckland. Played by Sam Lloyd, Ted was the hospital's sad sack lawyer, a sweating, nervous wreck who was constantly bullied by the chief of medicine. He was the ultimate loser character, but Sam played him with such sweetness that you couldn't help but root for him. Beyond the comedy, Sam was an incredibly talented musician. He led the a cappella group The Blanks, also known as Ted's band, on the show, performing amazing covers that became fan favorites. In real life, Sam Lloyd was nothing like Ted. He was a vibrant, happy man, and in 2019 he was on top of the world. After years of waiting, he and his wife Vanessa had just welcomed their very first baby, a son named Weston. Sam was overjoyed to finally be a father. It was the happiest moment of his life. In early 2019, just weeks after bringing his son home, Sam started getting terrible headaches. He initially brushed it off, thinking it was just exhaustion from the new baby and the lack of sleep that comes with parenthood, but the headaches got worse. He went to the doctor for a checkup, and the news was devastating. They found a mass in his brain. It was a glioblastoma, the most aggressive and deadly form of brain tumor. To make matters even worse, the scans revealed the cancer had already metastasized. It had spread to his lungs, his spine, and his jaw. It was a death sentence delivered right as his new life was beginning. Sam fought bravely for a year, trying every experimental treatment possible because he desperately wanted to see his son grow up. Tragically, he passed away in 2020 at the age of 56. It was a heartbreaking, cruel twist of fate for a man who had brought so much musical joy and laughter to one of our favorite shows.